Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar today. As we're all very aware, phishing attacks have been more sophisticated. They're increasing in numbers. So thanks for joining us today. We're gonna talk about how we can help you detect, prevent, and protect. So my name is Christy Williams. I'm the demand generation manager here, so I am on the marketing side. I've been with the company about 1.5 years now and have been blogging about phishing for a long time. We've had a lot of questions come up from customers and prospective clients alike about phishing and what they can do. So Alicia and I have come together today to help educate you guys. So Alicia, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Alicia Mushag. I've been with the company over almost 7 years at this point, and my current role is customer engagement manager. So I'm here to make sure that whatever the customers need, and between you and the engineering side, everybody makes sure that they uh, talk amongst themselves and everybody understands what's going on.
Great, thanks. So here's a little bit of the agenda today. We're going to talk about phishing by the numbers, some recent statistics around phishing. We'll go over the different types of phishing. There's always new methods of madness these hackers are using, ways to prevent phishing, how to detect a phishing email once you've received it, so it's gotten past that prevention phase, and then tools that you can protect yourself and some resources available to you to help educate you and your teams further.
So, what we'd like to talk about today is what does phishing actually mean? So, 1.5 million new phishing sites are created each and every month. So, if you wrap your brain around that, that's like over 15 million new phishing sites each year. 30% of phishing messages get opened by end users. And when we talk about end users, we're talking about your employees. We're talking about you. We're talking about your end user. And 90% of percentage of the data breaches are caused by phishing. So when you end up with a breach, quote unquote, what we like to call, whether that's a ransomware, whether that's a phishing where it starts spamming everybody in your address book. 90% of those breaches are caused by end users, and 60% of small business shut down within 6 months of an attack. So you need to be aware, if you're a mid to small business, what is your backup data recovery strategy? Because when you do get phished, we do have options for you to be able to revert back prior to that phishing attack.
And the important thing to note is, as Alicia was alluding to, that those end users are really your first and last line of defense. So, whether you can have all these things in place, but if the email is still gotten through, you need to make sure you and your employees are all educated to know what to look for, and that's what will help today. So, despite these numbers, 81% of data breach victims don't have a system or tool to identify threats. So with that said, I want to ask the audience now, do you think you know what a phishing email will look like? So we're going to send up a poll. So just select yes or no on the screen. If you received an email and and it's a phishing email, do you think you'd be able to tell whether or not it's a phishing email? So far, we got a confident audience. We got 100% yes. So, well, hopefully we can still teach you something today. Um, but cool. Well, that's good. But again, hopefully we can still help you identify some different phishing, which we'll go over the different types now. So deceptive phishing, that's the most common. These scam on the internet today, this is where the hacker or the fraudster tries to impersonate a legitimate company or a person within a company to steal your personal or financial information. So this could be click this link and enter your password so that they can get some sort of personal identifiable information about you and confidential material. These emails typically have a sense of urgency about them to kind of make you panic and go ahead and give them that info that they're looking for. Spear phishing is similar to deceptive, but these are much more targeted. So this person has already found out some sort of information about you. They know your name, your position, the company, perhaps your phone number, and they'll use that to almost as validity to say, hey, we already know this about you. Please confirm it, or please add this data to our existing data, so that they'll get this through social media and other websites where your information may be.
And then farming, instead of baiting people, farming targets your servers. So when we talk about servers, we're talking about your IP addresses and those addresses that are associated within your company. So that means that when you're in, let's say you have AT&T, or you have, um, you know, CenturyLink or whoever it is, and they're like, oh, your IP address block is 600.000.500.123 through 235. That's when they start targeting those particular IP address blocks. And then we have whaling. Whaling is when you specifically get targeted from one of your high profile, what we would call C-level executives. So that would be like your CEO or your CFO or your CIO going, hey, Susie, please send me 10 Amazon gift cards for the amount of X amount. Well, that would be whaling. And then that also targets right back into CEO frauding, where it's potentially, again, your CEO or your CFO or your C-level executive, again, sending those type of emails going, hey, Bob, can you send me these type of gift cards? And then the big one that we want to touch on is social engineering. Now, with the social media, the way that it is today with Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, everybody knows a lot about you. So you want to make sure that you make your profiles private, not public, which you can find those settings within your user, um, within your,
Account settings.
thank you, user account settings. Thank you. You can find those settings within there, and then you want to make sure those settings are set to private. So therefore, when you go to say, hey, look at me, I'm from, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is where I'm from, potentially a hacker could try to get into my information, and that could potentially be one of the questions they ask is, what is your hometown you're from? So you want to make sure those settings in your social media are set to private.
Yeah, and actually, there was a recent Facebook conference where Mark Zuckerberg was talking about how the future is private, and these social media sites are trying to crack down and help us all with these attacks becoming more sophisticated. So, with that, let's talk about some ways that we can prevent phishing. You kind of were alluding to the limiting of sharing personal information online and your social media. Um, with the server hacking and issues there, making sure that it's a secure site. So looking for that HTTPS in the URL. What else, Alicia?
I was going to say, and then the big thing is make sure your updates. I know we all hate it. The pop-up comes up and it's like, oh, your updates are ready. Would you like to install them 4 hours from now or just defer? You have to make sure your browsers are updated, your applications are updated, and those things are super, super important to you because not only are they updates to the application, they're updates to whatever security codes and whatever patches that that particular application had maybe had found that they have now secured you from being able to uh, not be breached from those particular security
Yeah,
risks.
so hackers will find these loopholes in these applications, right? And then the owner of the applications figure that out. They go in and block those loopholes now, and that's why there's an update to the app, and that's why it's so important to keep up with those updates because they're going to prevent those breaches from happening.
And then, as we always know, when you're on the interwebs, whether if it's your intranet site or your internet site, avoid the pop-ups. If it pops up, most of us already have it enabled where it's like pop-ups are disabled, don't show them to me. But if there's ever a chance that you do get a pop-up, do not click on it. I don't care if they're giving you $1 million. Don't do it. Don't click on the pop-ups. So make sure that you're watching those things when you're on the interweb.
Yeah, and first and foremost, making sure you have an antivirus software and firewalls installed. So that's going to be kind of your castle wall, if you will, for protecting your internal information. So some red flags to look at when you've received a phishing email or what you believe to be a phishing email. So spelling and grammar mistakes, this isn't as common. Hackers are getting smarter, but you still might see it from time to time. Tone, typically there's an urgency of the message creating a panic. The other thing that I've noticed is someone might email me posing as a colleague of mine, but it just doesn't sound like the way they've emailed me in the past or how they speak to me in person. So thinking about who you're actually getting the email from and is this how they would speak to me? Checking the email signature. This one's really big. A lot of times when it's a legitimate company, you'll see their title, their company name, their phone number, their email, maybe even a link to one of their social sites or their website. If they don't have much anything, maybe just a first name, first and last name and company, that's something to be cause for concern. Suspicious attachments. So Alicia was talking about the CEO fraud and whaling type emails. You might get an email from your CFO or something that's like, why isn't this invoice paid? Pay this right now. But the title of the file might be weird, or you might not be expecting said invoice, and that's a red flag. Is it asking you to confirm personal information? So maybe it's like, hey, we have your name as this and that. Please log in to just confirm. Well, who's sending that email and what is it exactly asking? Double checking the sender's actual email address. So it might show, Bob Jones is your CEO, and it might say from Bob Jones, but then when you look at the email, it's like XYZ123 at noaddress.com or something like that. So hovering over the names and making sure that the email address aligns with who you actually believe it's coming from. And the same goes for URLs. So whether or not it looks like an actual physical URL or it's just a hyperlink, simply just hover your mouse over it because that'll be telling whether or not it's a real site or not. You can see if you recognize the URL. Again, you can look for that HTTPS. So these are all good things for you to just be aware of. This is kind of like your checklist of what to look for when you're suspecting a phishing email. So I know a lot of you said you believe that you could help determine what it looks like today, but I hope you're able to take some of these away that you might not have known before. Um,
And
so
then,
go
as
ahead.
as Christy has said, when in doubt, at the end of the day, if you're getting an email from Bob Jones, your CEO of your company, pick up the phone and call him. If he's
Hmm.
asking you for five $100 Amazon gift cards and he wants you to email him the security code on the back of the gift cards, more than likely that's a scam. Pick up the
That's
phone.
right. Yep,
If
pick up the phone. I
pick
know we
up,
don't do it a lot in 2019, but it's really the easiest way
it
uh,
really.
to really confirm if you're suspicious. So now we're going to go through some examples of a phishing email. So I'm going to show you this example of an Amazon email, and we're going to ask you, the audience, to point out the red flags in this email. So take a couple seconds to look this over, and then we'll go ahead and launch a poll, and you guys can tell me what you think is wrong with this email, why it might be a phishing email. And you can select as many answers as you wish, so there might be more than one answer. So if you could go ahead and take a look at the email and answer the poll. So does the URL look suspicious? Is the logo legitimate? How about the tone of the email? Is there anything misspelled? Okay. A lot of people saying the URL is suspicious. About half the audience saying the logo's fake, the tone. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look.
Yeah.
So bad URL. Yep, URL suspicious. So pretty obvious I put malicious.com, but it might say amazon.xyz.com. This is not the true logo. The prime is actually, I think, a different color. Um, there's a misspelling, so applied obviously has two P's, so that one's easy, might be an easy one to miss. Hovering over the URL, as we've said before, um, and looking like a bad URL there, and then the sense of urgency saying it expires next week, so make sure you hurry up.
And I was going to say a lot of us use Outlook for our primary mailbox delivery uh, system. And when you're in Outlook, if you use the preview pane, you're able to look at these particular things where the URL looks suspicious without actually opening those emails. So I would want to encourage everybody that if you're not already using something like a preview pane within Outlook, whether if it's Gmail or whatever mailbox delivery system you're using, I would definitely recommend that.
So second example here, it looks pretty legitimate. So you've got the right email address, you've got what seems to be an okay subject line, an okay sender, the logo's all good. It looks just like, I don't know how many of you use DocuSign, but it looks really just like how a DocuSign email comes in. So what is to note here is that, again, it's important to hover that URL because now we have docu-sign.webxyz.com. And so that is not, there's no HTTPS. That's not a good URL. So they're not as obvious as the last one. So just really making sure that you look at everything. And at the end of the day, when in doubt, throw it out. Um, you know, it's better to delete an email than to accidentally download some sort of ransomware that's going to go in and breach your system. So, um, and again, like we've said, just pick up the phone and call or walk down the hallway and go see the person that sent it to you and just confirm with them that they really are looking for what they're asking.
Correct.
So we've talked about prevention. We've talked about if it gets past that prevention and what to look for and what to do. Now we can talk about some tools that can help you protect yourself.
Sure. So one of the biggest tools that obviously we can help you with is end user training. So at the end of the day, the end user is the first line defense and the last line of defense in any phishing, hacking, ransomware, anything. Because at the end of the day, if your end user is trained properly what to click on and what to not click on, that is going to be your biggest line of not being phished or scammed or hacked. So, one of the ways that we help with that is we do simulated phishing campaigns where we will upload your domain, we will upload all of your end users, and we will actually send your end users a phishing email to see if they, one, open it, two, click on it, three, actually enter their personal information into whatever that is. Excuse me. So that's one of the ways that we can help you with that. And then we also do a dark web scan. So depending on what your excuse me, depending on your domain, we actually enter that into our tool, and we actually do a dark web scan on your domain to see if anybody's trying to hack you. So that's one of the ways that we can help you with this particular phishing end user training.
And then advanced threat protection.
Yes, ATP is one of our Microsoft tools that is aligned with our Office 365 platform. And that ATP enables us to have real time protection from sophisticated attacks, protection against unsafe attachments, which is a big thing. Because when we looked back at one of Christie's examples with the DocuSign, that was an attachment. You actually had to click the link, click the attachment in order to download it. Um, uh, Visibility into potential targets. So what ATP does is it has an algorithm where it actually identifies as end users are getting quote unquote spam or phishing emails. Those end users identify those emails as those potential threats, and then that is fed into the algorithm of Office 365. And then unsafe link blocking and URL trace capabilities. So when we're looking at those phishing emails and we're hovering over those URLs where they're amazon.prime.xyz.1234, potentially ATP through Office 365 will be able to catch those potential threats before they even hit your mailbox.
And I love this tool. We use it internally, and the way it works is at the end of the day, I'll essentially get an email from Microsoft and it says, you have X number of quarantined messages. Some days it's one or two, some days it's 9 or 10. But it's really nice because the email itself will show you the sender name, the subject line, and then you have a ton of options. You can say block this sender always, and it won't even come through quarantine anymore. You can preview it to see, I'm not sure about this. Let me preview it before allowing it to go into my inbox. Or it might be a newsletter that you signed up for that your filter just doesn't recognize that new email address. You haven't added it to your address book, so you can just go ahead and release and allow sender. So it's really cool what it allows you to do on a daily basis, and you see those real-time results of how it's really helping you. The other tools we have available are Azure Information Protection, and this is cool. It allows you to your organization to classify and protect documents or emails by applying certain labels using encryption, identity management, and other authorization policies that can be set up by your administrator. So basically, the administrator can go in and configure labels that have rules to detect sensitive data. So say you're working on an invoice and you're in some document that has a credit card number, automatically they will recommend to label it as sensitive data, which will classify and protect the document.
And this
The
also goes into for our medical folks that may be attending, when you're doing a social security number or you're doing any private patient data, that will also enable you to encrypt that data when you're sending it back and forth, either internally or externally.
Yeah, so anything, HIPAA or otherwise, we can make sure that we're classifying that data. And then the last tool I want to just talk about is Microsoft Secure Score. So this is for those people using Office 365. This is essentially a service that compares the services you're using to a baseline that's set by Microsoft. So the score basically signifies how well your organization is aligned with best security practices. So you're given points for enabling and configuring recommended security features, performing security related tasks like looking at reports, or addressing improvement actions of suggestions where you could add third party applications or software. One example might be have you enabled multi factor authentication? So that would be something that increases your score, for example. So there's a lot of tools out there. They're getting more sophisticated by the day to really help us protect ourselves from these continuous threats. Um, so that's it for the webinar. Thank you for joining us here today. Anyone who's joined, Alicia talked about briefly the dark web scans. So if this is something you're interested in, you can send us an email or comment in the chat box. We'll also send a follow-up email with all this information. So don't worry. Also, if you're interested in any end user training or prevention tools we talked about, please feel free to get in touch. Just to give you an example, this is what the dark web scan looks like. I've obviously removed any personal information from it, but you can enter your domain and it will give you a low, medium, or high risk score. It'll tell you the number of accounts with data breaches and the number of total data breaches. So you can go in and say, Christy Williams has been breached 4 times. Okay, we need to clearly do some training with Christy because she is not knowing how to protect herself out there. So it just gives you good insight to see where you could utilize some training or some of the resources and tools we've talked about. Our blog has a ton of articles about phishing. We can send those out to you as well. So at this point, I'm going to open it up for questions. I did see a couple questions come through before. So one of them, I believe from a customer, was asking if they receive a phishing email, did they contact managed solution to have those emails blocked? Yes. If you're a current customer, please make the help desk aware, and we'll take a look at your infrastructure and see if there's any recommendations we can make, and look at what kind of spam filter settings you have and see how we can improve those. And then again, educating your employees and people. So if you get those, please send those over to our help desk. And if you're not a customer and you feel like you're being phished or you're under attack, please get in touch. We work with a lot of customers that experience this type of stuff, and we're able to enable some of these tools or do some end user training so that they help protect themselves from these kinds of
And
attacks.
I was just going to touch on the fact that when Christy and I were going through the end user training and the different Microsoft tools, if you're currently on Office 365, whether if it's with Teams or SharePoint or just email only, those different SKUs that Christy touched on, where whether if it's advanced threat protection, Azure information protection, or Microsoft Secure Score, those are things that we can do an ad hoc with you via your Office 365 licensing. It may be an additional upcharge for a month or two, but we can go ahead and do those things for you based on your Office 365 current licensing.
Yeah, good point. Office 365 is doing a ton of stuff around security and they're updating their applications really regularly to make sure that their users are protected. And that's one of the reasons we use it internally, because it's got a lot of great tools to make sure that we're safe and secure when we're going about our daily business. So Anyone else have any other questions? Okay, it looks like that's it. We ended a little early, but I hope this was educational and valuable for you guys to join us here today. If you have any questions on how we can help you, or if you think of something after we hang up here, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Everybody have a great weekend.